All right, everybody, what's going on? Welcome to Hang 10. We're here hanging out in the Wavy Plus studio. Myself, Brian Michigan, and we're also joined by our chief meteorologist, Jeff Edmondson.
How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing well. A lot of surfing recently.
Yeah, you've been going out a lot. Yeah, I've missed out on the last two swells, but it's been looking pretty fun.
Yeah, Jeff, so a big reason, honestly, why I wanted to kind of take the job here at Wavy was because I found out Jeff was also kind of a waterman.
Oh, yes.
Jeff's a big body surfer, though. Not much of a surfer,
Yep.
but you kind of went bodyboarding route.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most surfers probably have at least a little bit of bodyboarding experience.
I would say so, yeah.
But mainly because I feel like when a lot of us grow up, we start out, at least when I grew up, I started out surfing on a boogie board, on a bodyboard.
Okay. Yeah, if you're small and light enough, you can. The physics work.
And exactly. And I used to stand up because I was, again, so small, so light that I would stand up on my boogie board.
Okay.
And spin around, do all that sort of thing. And then, one day I was walking down the beach with my parents and we found surfing and we were like, okay, let's try that next summer.
And then a lot of younger Groms too, learning the sport of surfing, they'll be on the surfboard and they'll ride it just like a bodyboard.
Exactly.
Because they don't have the part of standing up figured out. So that's kind of part of it too.
And also bodyboarding in general, way cheaper of a sport.
Yeah.
We'll get into all this, of course. But
kind of.
It is definitely, of course, there's to an extent.
But entry level, cheap.
Entry level, super cheap. All you need to do is really go to, you can even find like bodyboards at Five Below. You can find really cheap ones. They don't work as well. But if you really just wanted to go and start doing it, you could find it for relatively cheap.
Yeah, and you can, the sad thing is you can find them next to the garbage can at the end of the season because a tourist bought one and said, well, we can't fly home with this because we live in Kansas.
Yeah.
So they buy it for the time they're here and then it just gets trashed.
I'd be very curious to know the details because obviously, surfing is big. Surf lessons, the amount of people doing surf lessons in the summertime shoots up dramatically. I want to know how much money are companies making by just selling their boogie boards each season, just cheap boogie boards. What's the total? Because
I don't see a lot of that happening.
You don't think? Yeah.
No, I don't see a lot of people. It's like been two boards in the last couple of years I've seen that have been left, but still it's just like one of those things where what I do when I see it is let me see if I can repurpose it. My buddy grabbed it and said, hey, let's try and see if we can deck this out with fins and stuff stuff that you don't put on a bodyboard. You just try it because why not if you have the board, just try something.
Now you're from Minnesota.
Yep.
How did you get into bodyboarding? Because for me, I'm from New Jersey. That was like it became second nature growing up that I would be in the water surfing. Yeah.
See, for me, the only lake that has waves that would be surfable would be Lake Superior, one of the Great Lakes. But the Great Lakes, Lake Superior is 2.5 hours north of Minneapolis, of the Twin Cities. So that wasn't the place. And there's actually a surf spot called Stony Point on Lake Superior.
I have heard of this.
Yes. I've never been there personally. I've driven by it, never paddled out in it. But let's go back to the question. I learned and I got into the sport because I lived in Minnesota, but I flew to West Palm Beach. My aunt lives there.
Gotcha.
So West Palm Beach, it's right near the ocean, essentially, 20, 30 minutes away. She lived from the ocean. So we got a board there. She had one in her house and I just did it very casually. So if you see a young kid on a boogie board where they catch a wave and they just ride to the shore, that's what I was doing.
Right.
And that's how I got in love with the sport and fell in love with the sport. I didn't do surfing because I was only there for one day, 2 days a year. So let me just do something that I can just quickly do. And hoping that I didn't even know how to forecast waves or see if there's waves, just hoped.
It's a whole nother level of the science too.
Yes. And there would be waves usually when I went. I did remember going out back when I was in college, a buddy of mine and we went down to Florida. We stayed with my aunt and there were waves. And we weren't out in a thunderstorm. We were out in a heavy rain event. So Florida, you get those afternoon showers that pop up. We had one of those that developed. I remember it, and the waves it felt like they were huge. I don't know how big they were, but it was pretty fun. It was pretty sketchy being in the water. There wasn't any lightning though, but fun stuff.
That's good.
That's how I learned.
Yeah, and I feel like it's different for everybody, but a lot of people, it's that first trip.
Yep.
It's that first trip. Actually, it's funny that you say Florida because my first ever location that I ever surfed was in Florida. It was Daytona Beach.
Daytona Beach, okay.
My great grandmother she had like a condo on the beach there, near Ponce Inlet. If anyone knows, that's near New Smyrna, a very popular surf spot, but pretty sharky too. But that's where I learned, and I fell in love with it ever since. And it's funny because a lot of people, it's a vacation.
Yeah.
That they start.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people, at least my friends growing up, it was all, oh yeah, we went here, we went here, we went here. And I started riding waves.
Yep.
So really cool how it all kind of comes together. Surfing and bodyboarding, there's kind of this rivalry. We'll call it a rivalry, even though it's kind of it's not an aggressive rivalry for the most part. You know, there's places where you hear stories about, you know, guys getting into it on the beach, you know, whatever the case may be,
Yep.
some real hardcore localism. But I feel like, at least throughout my life in New Jersey, the banter back and forth between surfing and bodyboarding was more friendly. It
Yeah.
was kind of like, you're just a bodyboarder. Like a surfer's perspective, they're just like, oh, you're just a bodyboarder.
Right.
You can't even stand up, which not technically true. There's drop knee bodyboarding.
Yes, there
there's
is.
a lot of different ways to do it.
There's a lot of different ways to do it. And there's a lot of other terms that we're not even going to say on microphone of what
Yeah,
bodyboarding is called.
Oh yeah.
But but hey, it's part of the thing. Now, I don't know where all of that begins, and we're going to try and get into that here in this episode a little bit. But I have not had any issues that I've experienced when I've paddled out in some of the thickest areas in Virginia Beach and some of the other areas in terms of paddling out on what type of board I'm on. I have seen localism, if you're not a local or not, but that's a little bit of a different thing than the type of board that you're riding.
Yeah, the surfing, bodyboarding, again, back to it being a playful rivalry. It's not like there's any bad blood. There's honestly more bad blood in the water when it comes to, like you said, guys not being from the area, or whether they maybe are from the area and they're just maybe not being respectful to the lineup. I
feel like an out of control or a newbie bodyboarder is safer than a newbie surfer.
Oh yeah, because bodyboarding, there's no fins in the bottom.
There's no fins.
It doesn't, there's not as much of a risk. Do you ever run over people?
Well, no, I mean, not intentionally, of course. Of course. It's not like whack-a-mole, but I remember feeling people's legs as my fins passed over them, but the slick on the bottom bodyboard, it should push a little bit of water. So in a way, it should push the person away.
Yeah. And
then there should be a little bit of a cushion. So I've never run over anyone directly, thankfully, because I don't want to do that.
Avoid it at all costs.
Yeah, that would not be fun. I mean, hit someone in the head. You don't want to do that. But I believe I've run over someone's legs before as they're ducking on the wave. Yeah, you kind of feel like, ooh.
And on a surfboard, a little different. You have the fins to, be aware. I've actually, my ankle when I was younger got ran over by a fin. I was being dumb. I kicked off my board because I was scared of the wave coming, and I kicked it a little bit weird, and the guy coming by caught it, and it hurts. It really hurts.
Ouch.
So, a little bit of a difference there. Surfing, bodyboarding, surfing, maybe a little bit more dangerous under the water with the fins, but also the perspective that you're riding the wave at.
Yeah.
In bodyboarding, a wave may seem bigger if you're lying prone on a bodyboard than surfing where you're standing up. And I feel like maybe with, a lot of bodyboarders have the fins, kind of give them a little bit of an extra kick into the wave. So maybe when it comes to surfing, maybe smaller waves, maybe a little bit easier for the bodyboarder than the surfer, especially guys on shortboards for surfing. It could be a little challenging surfing smaller waves, but for bodyboarders, you can kind of get right into it.
Yeah, the fins are really helpful. So as a kid starting out, you just you walk in the water as deep as you can go, or deep as it's safe to go, essentially. So it's around waist deep, maybe chest deep. And then you kick off the ground, you kick off the sand under the water, and you try and propel yourself to match the wave. And then you just kind of ride that to the shore. That's what the little kids are doing. But when you have the fins, you can accelerate without having to use the ground. So it's a great way to accelerate yourself to match the speed of the wave, to catch the wave. And they work very well. It's all dependent on the strength, not so much of your legs, it's your ankle strength.
Right.
So that's what's sore the next day for me. Because the ankle, if this is I'll use my phone. If your fin is here and your foot ends right here, you need to, and then my wrist is the ankle, you need to have that strength here to hold it, because if you can't, your
and the flexibility too.
Yeah, you have to hold it rigid so you kick. So it's tough.
A little bit different with the paddling there. The surfing, of course, you're not really kicking. You're using your arms. And I actually put together a couple clips here.
Okay.
Look at this. This is Jeff.
Yeah. This is the December swell.
A couple years ago. Yeah, a couple years ago. Big swell here in Virginia Beach. That's Jeff. Believe it, that's your chief meteorologist, folks. Shredding. I put together a quick video kind of showing the difference in perspective and the paddling difference between surfing and bodyboarding. So we'll get into this video. We'll get into this video here, and we'll be back in just a moment. We'll have a quick break, and then we'll talk about the history behind the two sports. Alrighty, what's up, everybody? We are back. Myself, Jeff Edmondson, showed a quick little video, kind of showing the perspectives, the different perspectives of surfing versus bodyboarding. Now, we also want to get into a different topic, which is the history of the two sports.
Yes.
I would say they kind of go hand in hand. Both sports really do have a rich history.
Yeah.
People think surfing first, which, yes, surfing or wave riding kind of came first, but I think surfing, it wasn't always what you thought it was. It wasn't always standing up. Like back in ancient times in, the Polynesian Islands, people weren't always just standing up on boards for recreational purposes. They were using it more so surfing or wave riding for traveling, getting across all the islands, using wooden watercraft that weren't even really surfboards at the time, just maybe big wooden logs that were buoyant to travel and to fish. And sometimes even, ride the waves into the beach after maybe going out to catch fish, and not necessarily standing, but maybe lying prone. So a lot of people think of like, okay, surfing came first. Well, no, it's kind of like a mix of both. I would say wave riding came first.
Yeah.
And not so much boogie boarding or surfing.
If you have a bunch of supplies, fish on your craft, your buoyant craft, you're probably not going to stand up with all the stuff because you could fall in.
Right.
That's a risk that you don't need to take because you're not doing it for fun.
Right.
But I'm sure someone said, hey, what if you try standing up on that thing? Maybe that's how it all got started.
I'm sure that's
a younger person.
Definitely one of the many, ways how it got started. As I mentioned, this was probably over 1,000 years ago that people in the Pacific Islands, the Polynesian Islands, kind of started riding waves. Now, during this similar time, it was also kind of prevalent West Africa. There's proof of even Peru, that people were doing this as a form of, again, transportation, fishing, thinking more of survival back then, not so much recreation. The recreational side of things got started afterwards in Hawaii. Well, that's what really blew up. We'll touch on that in a moment. But I actually want to show really quickly, there's a really cool picture. Here's one of the pictures, but cave drawings from the 12th century.
Look at that.
Of people riding waves. This is someone, I guess, standing up on a surfboard.
And this is verified that this is ancient. This isn't some kid that went down there saying, hey, I got a rock.
This is
I'm drawing the rocks.
This is from a surfing museum in Hawaii, where they have tons of images of the cave drawings.
That's
there.
Cool.
Really cool. This was so long ago. You would think, most people think of surfing as, you're ripping down the line, modern day surfboards. Yeah. It's become kind of commercialized too.
Well, and adding it to and there's nothing wrong with it being in the Olympics, but adding it to the Olympics is another level of spotlight on it. You think of the best surfers in the world, or maybe the most well-known surfers in the world just by their name, like a Kelly Slater or Laird Hamilton, just names that the general public might know. Yeah. And they just see that and
they think of that kind of surfing.
They think of that.
And not the older ways of doing it where people were on these. Look at this picture. This was in the 1890s in Hawaii. That's a guy. It looks like surfboards back then didn't have fins. This honestly looks like a bodyboard too. People used these boards. Yeah. It depended on the person too. So back in, sort of the older times when the sport was still just getting going, in Hawaii specifically, it was mainly for royalty that the surfing sport was done. And the higher the status of an individual, the longer the surfboard. So you see this surfboard here, it's shorter. Most people who surfed back in those times had those shorter boards. Not as many people had long surfboards, like the 12-foot boards, those huge pieces of wood that you see. Yeah. Those were usually the people of higher class. And surfing,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and surfing in Hawaii was taken so seriously. Now to this day, it's still extremely serious. But back then, it really determined kind of your social class. And I learned, and I thought this was really funny. Back then, the guy who caught the biggest waves or had the longest rides or had the best style sometimes would get the higher social class, have the nicest place to live, have the best luck with trying to find a wife. even.
Yeah.
Like that's how it was back then for people, not just in just the Polynesian Islands in general, but Hawaii especially, because they took it really, really seriously.
Well, look how muscular that guy is too. I mean, the picture's pretty grainy, but you can see he's in good shape.
He's a great shape guy, and that's you know that's another advantage to surfing, bodyboarding, just being in the water in general. It's great for your body. It's great. It's great to relieve stress. It's great to get yourself kind of involved in. One guy who really made it popular to the world, though, is a guy named Duke Kahanamoku. This guy is referred to as the father of modern surfing.
Okay.
He was from Hawaii, and he essentially traveled all over the world doing wave riding demonstrations. He went all up the coast of Australia, New Zealand, even on the East Coast. Back in the 1900s, he did a wave riding demonstration on the East Coast in New York, Long Beach.
That's
he did
really
one.
cool.
So
where is this?
So this statue, this is Duke Kahanamoku's statue. This is in Honolulu.
Okay.
In Hawaii.
Haven't been there. Yeah.
So
I've been to Hawaii, but not to Oahu.
Yeah. So you can visit this. You can see people, hang the flowers, the leis on there.
The leis, because he's wearing one in the statue.
Yeah, to honor him.
They put more on his hands.
Now, what I also thought was cool, and kind of digging back into surf history a little bit, from when this all first started on the Hawaiian Islands, especially, people would go to, specifically surfers, would go to kahunas, which were basically priests for waves, to pray for better waves to come. They would make offerings to trees that they were going to use to cut down and make surfboards. Isn't that cool?
That's wild.
Like that's really, they were so connected, people on these islands, with the sport, with the ocean, that it became somewhat of a spiritual, kind of endeavor.
You have to be connected to the ocean when you paddle out.
Of course.
The ocean can be just, you got to see how it's feeling, how the tide's coming in, how the waves are looking.
Yeah.
Which wave, and this could be a whole episode. I don't even know how we do it. The anatomy of a wave.
Oh my gosh.
But when you see a wave, and if this is the one you want to take or the one that you want to let go, that's something that you only learn through time.
Of course.
It's very hard to describe to what it needs to look like and what's going to happen. It's absolutely fascinating. And these people that we're talking about were the ones that first figured that out.
Yeah. And kind of going back to Duke Kahanamoku, he not only was he a surfer, kind of going with the whole waterman theme.
Yeah.
He was an Olympic athlete. He won 3 gold medals in swimming.
Wow.
So these people are, big time athletes, but he competed, especially the Stockholm Games in 1912. He won a freestyle swimming gold medal. So a very successful athlete. And, this was probably the perfect guy to bring the sport of surfing to the world.
Yeah.
Just kind of helping people to fall in love with Mother Nature and fall in love with being in the water and being in the ocean.
This is about 112, 120 years ago.
Yeah, roughly. This is a long time ago.
Wow.
I want to transition because surfing kind of led to what is now modern day bodyboarding, specifically with a guy named Tom Morey, who invented the first boogie bodyboard back in 1971. There it is. That's him with the bodyboard. Yep. He wanted to bring wave riding to the masses. So maybe people who financially couldn't swing it, because surfboards are so expensive, especially nowadays, they're really expensive. Back then he had a kit, a wave riding kit. You could buy it for like $25-$30 and you could have your own boogie board
ready to go.
Ready to go. He made it easy, accessible, cheap. That was probably the biggest things for, kind of starting out, to bring it to a wide variety of people. But also Morey was an excellent surfer. So he knew kind of how the ocean worked. He was also a mathematician and an engineer. So he kind of figured out how to make this smaller board that's also buoyant. He used foam. And that actually laid the foundation to what is now modern day bodyboarding, where you see guys ripping. This is a great picture. Ripping down the line the same spots that surfers would go out at.
Yep.
And it also laid the foundation to modern day soft top surfboards.
Yep.
So from wave riding to surfing to boogie boarding or bodyboarding, and then to eventually making soft top surfboards, which nowadays actually help people learn how to surf and ride waves more because it's less intimidating than a hard a hard surfboard?
More buoyant.
Yes, more buoyant
So
too.
buoyancy is the key thing, kind of this whole part of the deal. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, but we saw the picture there. If you want to be a bodyboarder catching that same wave that a surfer catches, you have to have fins.
Yes.
Because the fins help you accelerate into the wave for the lack of buoyancy that
Right.
you have. Because a surfboard going, if you're sitting on top of it, it's going back behind your body, underneath your legs, back behind your body. So it could be as tall as you or it could be shorter, but
Yeah.
regardless, it's taller than a bodyboard. So you have buoyancy when you're pushing down on it to stand up. For the bodyboard, you have, I don't even know what percentage is in the water.
Right.
Maybe 60% is
Right.
touching the water. Then
Exactly.
the top maybe third or so is above the water for carving.
Right.
But the rest is your legs that are in the water, and you got to match the speed of the wave to catch it. So that's a big thing.
So and that's advancements over time.
Yes.
That's advancement. That's how kind of, I guess, surfing and bodyboarding now have become kind of almost two in the same. Like, of
Yeah.
course, you're not standing up, and surfers will have this rivalry of, oh, you didn't take the time to learn how to stand up, blah, 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 blah. Both sports are just as fun.
And both sports have advanced tech
Advantages.
and basic tech.
Yeah.
So like the soft top surfboard is like a polyethylene bodyboard.
Right.
And then a polypropylene bodyboard would be more of an advanced material. And that gives us the ability to flex the board
Right.
differently.
For different kinds of waves.
Yes, and water temperatures too.
Ooh, that's true. I didn't even think of that.
Yep.
That's
water
cool.
temperatures too. And then there's stringers that can be in boards. So like a large rod, one or two. I don't know if there's a triple stringer or not, but that can be in there to help make the board more rigid as well. So as you're riding the board, as you go into the wave, you're flexing it. As you come down, you release that flex, and that gives you that poof, that push
Yeah.
off the water. It's
Really cool
fascinating.
stuff. Yeah, the two sports go way back. When we come back, we're gonna go into one more topic here. This past week's swell, that tropical low that kind of
Yeah.
formed off the southeast coast,
Yeah.
didn't really pan out exactly how we wanted it to. I'm gonna go through the why.
Okay.
And what we can maybe expect moving forward if we get some similar situations like that where we have lows right off of our coastline that form. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. Really quickly, before we go, we're going to talk about this past swell. It was kind of a letdown. The forecast was maybe calling for a little bit more. It was okay in other areas. Actually, believe it or not, there was areas off to our north, Ocean City, Maryland, they scored given the direction of the swell.
Yep.
The way this past storm came in, if you remember back to last week, the National Hurricane Center put out a little 10% risk for something to develop into a tropical entity. Whether it became tropical or not, we were still going to see waves either way. It was a storm system, had some wind over the water, that's a fetch, and that creates waves. If you have a big enough fetch, you can get a longer period swell,
Yep.
a more amount of days you could surf, but also the stronger the wind, the bigger the waves. So we had this little tropical low. Here we go. We'll go through it here. It's kind of recapping the swell. It kind of formed off of the east coast of Florida, and it moved its way north. Now it kind of had some interactions with land and eventually moved up and out of here, kind of just off to our east. And that allowed for a couple of things. A more southerly swell. If we were to get more of an easterly swell, it would have had to go more north to south. But because it was kind of traveling in more of an easterly or northeasterly direction when it got towards Hatteras, that meant the swell was going to be coming in more out of a southerly angle. Look in the graphic here. What do you notice from Virginia Beach down to Hatteras? You notice the shape of the coastline. That's pretty important when it comes to south swells. In a directly south or southeast swell, a lot of that swell is going to be missing the beach.
Yep.
It's going to be going up towards the eastern shore and towards Maryland. Ocean City, Maryland, specifically with this swell was really good. It was like chest high and maybe head high on some of the sets from some of the footage I was looking at. While here in Virginia Beach,
nothing.
It was thigh high, waist high.
Yeah.
It's the same swell, just a different direction. You want you essentially want the waves to be coming in, especially with a short period swell, more perpendicularly to the coast. That way it catches all the energy and you have all those incoming waves coming right into the coastline. If it's more parallel, you can kind of think of it's kind of missing it, or it's passing us by.
So not like a 45-degree angle.
No, it's coming. It was coming in almost 180 degrees.
Okay.
So that's why you wanted to go up north to the eastern shore with this one, because the beaches there almost aim more southeasterly. So it could kind of catch a south swell a little bit better.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
Unfortunately, for a lot of Virginia Beach and Outer Banks surfers, this was not the one. But I think with this low, if it was a little stronger, maybe it could have got more swell into our area.
Yeah.
We're gonna hope that as the summer wears on, the water warms up. These lows that form off of the southeast coast can get a little bit stronger, because you got to think, even though down in Florida and Georgia off that coast, water temperatures are 80 degrees. You work your way north, they're in the 70s.
Yeah.
You're not going to get much development of anything tropical until the waters hit at least 80.
Right.
So we'll have to check back in. Next couple months, we'll see what happens.
The storm formed, on the coast or inland, and then it went out to sea. It just missed us.
Exactly. It just missed us. So maybe the next one, we're going to keep our fingers crossed.
Oh, yeah. We'll get some more.
And we're going to definitely get some more.
Wait till September.
Wait until September. Jeff, that's your favorite month for bodyboarding, right?
It's the month, and I learned this a couple of years ago. Do not go on vacation in the month of September. Yes, it is a peak of hurricane season, but everything that I want living here with the waves is in September.
The best waves for
Water's
bodyboarding.
warm, the waves are big, and the weather's perfect.
The waves are
Not too
consistent
hot.
too. Yeah.
It's
So
consistent.
perfect, great weather. Everything really all the way around. Bodyboarding, surfing, everything in September. It's the month to be here in Hampton Roads.
Don't be surprised if you watch one of these future episodes and we're in a car and someone's driving and we're just doing it on the way back from the beach.
Exactly.
I mean,
little swell recap. Hey, that's what we can look forward to going forward. Jeff, thanks so much for joining me. We had a lot of fun times talking about bodyboarding and surfing and how they're intertwined and the histories between both. So hopefully everybody enjoyed. Coming up next week, Steve Fendero is joining me, and we're going to talk about the differences between the East Coast and the West Coast, and why the West Coast more oftentimes gets more consistent and bigger surf. So stay tuned for that next week. Otherwise, Jeff, any final thoughts?
No final thoughts.
All right,
we'll see
everybody.
you in the water.
We'll see you in the water.